Major league hitters spend their entire lives preparing for speed. 95 miles per hour, 98, 100, sometimes even more. They train their eyes to recognize a baseball traveling from a pitcher's hand to home plate in less than half a second. So you'd think the easiest pitch for a major league hitter to destroy would be one traveling barely half that fast? But sometimes the exact opposite happens. A pitcher releases the ball, and instead of exploding toward home plate, it seems to float. It climbs high into the air, hangs there for what feels like forever, and then slowly drops toward the plate. The hitter waits, and waits, and then swings, sometimes way too early. Sometimes he freezes completely, and sometimes one of the best hitters on earth ends up looking absolutely ridiculous. This is the Eephus, a pitch so slow, so strange, and so completely different from everything else in baseball that it can disrupt the timing of hitters who can crush a 100-mile-per-hour fastball. But here's the strange part. The pitch wasn't created in some baseball laboratory. It wasn't developed using high-speed cameras, spin rates, or advanced analytics. It was born almost by accident, after a hunting accident nearly changed one pitcher's career forever. His name was Rip Sewell, and what he created became one of the strangest pitches baseball has ever seen. Most pitches are designed to beat hitters with either speed or movement. A fastball beats you with velocity. A slider moves away from the barrel. A curveball changes direction. A splitter suddenly disappears beneath the bat. But the Eephus attacks a hitter in a completely different way. It attacks his internal clock. An Eephus might travel only 40, 50, or 60 miles per hour. But the velocity isn't even the strangest part. It's the trajectory. Instead of taking a relatively direct path toward home plate, the ball climbs high into the air before dropping back towards the strike zone. It looks less like a major league pitch and more like someone tossing a baseball to a kid in the backyard. Which raises an obvious question. How could a professional hitter possibly miss it? To understand that, think about how little time a major league hitter normally has. Against a 95-mile-per-hour fastball, the baseball reaches home plate in roughly 0.4 of a second. The hitter has to recognize the pitch, decide whether to swing, and start moving almost immediately. Do that thousands and thousands of times, and the brain becomes calibrated for extreme speed. Then suddenly, someone throws the baseball 50 miles per hour. Everything changes. And that's exactly what Rip Sewell discovered. Sewell pitched in the major leagues during the 1930s and 40s, spending most of his career with the Pittsburgh Pirates. But in December of 1941, something happened far away from the baseball field. Sewell was involved in a hunting accident and was shot in the foot. The injury damaged his toes and forced him to change the way he pitched. During his recovery, Sewell started experimenting. Eventually, he discovered he could throw a baseball with an enormous arc. The ball would rise high above a hitter's normal line of sight, then fall back toward home plate. Sewell called it his blooper pitch, but his teammates eventually gave it a much stranger name. According to baseball lore, Pirates outfielder Maurice Van Robes watched Sewell throw the pitch and called it an Eephus. When Sewell asked what that meant, Van Robes supposedly told him that an Eephus meant nothing. And somehow, that's the perfect name, because the pitch looked like nothing. No overpowering velocity, no vicious break, nothing that should intimidate a major league hitter. Just a baseball floating through the air. But hitters hated it, and Sewell began using it for real. The results were impressive. From 1942 through 1944, Sewell won 17 games, then 21, then another 21. He became an all-star, and his bizarre blooper pitch became one of the most recognizable pitches in baseball. But there was a problem. Eventually, hitters knew it was coming, and one of those hitters was Ted Williams. If you're going to test a strange pitch against someone, Ted Williams probably isn't the guy you'd choose. Williams was one of the greatest hitters who ever lived. In 1941, he hit .406. He would eventually finish his career with a .344 batting average. And few players in baseball history understood hitting better than Ted Williams. But even Williams had trouble with Sewell's blooper. Then came the 1946 All-Star Game. Sewell was pitching for the National League. Williams was batting for the American League, and Sewell decided to give baseball's greatest hitter his signature pitch. The ball left Sewell's hand and floated high into the air. Williams waited and waited, and then he connected. Ted Williams hit the Eephus for a home run. And according to accounts of the famous at-bat, Williams actually moved forward in the batter's box while waiting for the ball to come down. Think about that. A major league pitch was traveling so slowly that Ted Williams had time to adjust his position before swinging. The moment became one of the most famous encounters involving the Eephus, but it also exposed the pitch's biggest weakness. When an Eephus fools a hitter, it can make him look completely helpless. But when it doesn't, you've basically thrown a major league hitter batting practice. And that's where the Eephus becomes really interesting. Because logically, this pitch shouldn't work. Major league hitters have incredible reaction time, elite hand-eye coordination, and years of experience hitting pitches much more difficult than a baseball slowly falling out of the sky. But hitting isn't just about seeing the baseball, it's about timing. A hitter's brain is constantly trying to predict where the baseball is going to be. Velocity, spin, trajectory, release point, all of that information has to be processed almost instantly. Imagine a pitcher throwing a 97-mile-per-hour fastball, then an 88-mile-per-hour slider, then maybe an 84-mile-per-hour changeup. The hitter has to adjust, but those are still major league speeds. Now imagine preparing for 97 and suddenly the next pitch is coming at 50. Your body wants to swing, your brain is screaming, "Wait!" And that sounds easy, but it isn't. The hitter still has to maintain his balance, track the baseball, recognize that enormous arc, and somehow keep his hands back long enough to make solid contact. That's why hitters can look almost confused against an Eephus. The pitcher isn't overpowering them, he's disrupting their sense of time. It's basically the baseball equivalent of slamming on the brakes while driving down the highway. But there's another reason pitchers don't simply start throwing Eephus pitches all game. Eventually, the hitter adjusts. And when he does, things can get ugly. Throwing an Eephus takes confidence because there may be no pitch in baseball that looks worse when it fails. A fastball can miss its location and survive because of velocity. A slider can hang and occasionally get away with it. An Eephus doesn't have that luxury. If the hitter recognizes it, stays balanced, and waits, you've just thrown him a very slow gift. Rip Sewell learned that against Ted Williams, and generations of pitchers after him learned the same lesson. That's why the Eephus works best as a surprise. You don't spend an entire game throwing it, you ambush someone with it. The hitter has spent the entire at-bat processing major league velocity. Then suddenly, the baseball practically stops. That's the weapon. Not movement, not spin, not velocity. The difference in speed. And despite the risk, The Eephus didn't disappear when Rip Sewell retired. Over the years, other Major League pitchers experimented with their own versions. One of the most famous was Bill "Spaceman" Lee. Lee was already one of baseball's great characters, so naturally, he had his own version. It became known as the Eephus. Then there was Dave LaRoche. His version had an even better name, the Lob. And as the decades passed, pitchers continued reaching into baseball's bag of tricks. Orlando Hernandez occasionally used an extremely slow curveball. Zach Greinke wasn't afraid to take a huge amount of velocity off a pitch. Yu Darvish has experimented with extremely slow breaking balls. And today, we sometimes see position players take the mound and throw pitches so slow, the radar gun looks broken. 48 miles per hour, 45, sometimes even slower. And every time it happens, the reaction is almost identical. Fans laugh, the announcers laugh, sometimes even the hitters laugh. Until someone swings and misses. Then suddenly the ridiculous pitch doesn't seem so ridiculous anymore. And here's what makes the Eephus especially fascinating today. Baseball has become obsessed with velocity. Pitchers throw harder than ever. Organizations search everywhere for arms that can reach the upper 90s. Training programs are designed to create more velocity. Radar guns have become part of baseball culture. 100 miles per hour used to feel almost mythical. Now major league hitters see triple digits regularly. And hitters have adapted. Their swings are built to survive extreme velocity. Their preparation is built around it. Their timing is calibrated for it. Which means baseball's slowest pitch might be even more psychologically disruptive in a game obsessed with throwing harder. Imagine seeing 98, 99, 100, and then 52. That's not simply a slower pitch. For a fraction of a second, it's almost a completely different sport. And that's what Rip Sewell discovered more than 80 years ago. Sometimes the best way to beat a hitter who's prepared for speed is to give him almost none at all. The Eephus has never taken over baseball, and it probably never will. It's too risky, too unpredictable, and if the hitter waits long enough, he might send it halfway into the parking lot. But maybe that's exactly why the pitch has survived. Baseball is a game built around tiny advantages. Pitchers search for more velocity, more spin, sharper movement, and better mechanics. And hidden among all that technology and science is a pitch that seems to ignore everything baseball has learned. Throw it high, throw it slow, and hope the hitter's brain gets in the way. Rip Sewell discovered something more than 80 years ago that baseball still hasn't completely forgotten. Sometimes, you don't need to throw the nastiest pitch in baseball. You just need to throw the one the hitter isn't prepared to see. And the Eephus is still exactly that. Hey, if you like stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Diamond Depths, and we'll see you next time.